the Libertarian Party opposes the Help to Buy Commonwealth Powers Bill 2025, and we oppose it with vehemence. On the 12th of August 1986, former President Ronald Reagan wisely said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." The Help to Buy scheme will allow individuals and couples to enter into a Faustian relationship with Housing Australia and put down a deposit as low as 2%, with the taxpayer fronting up with the rest as an equity stake in the property. That's right, the government wants a piece of your most valuable investment and asset, your home. The Help to Buy scheme website notes, Help to Buy will be administered by Housing Australia and will commence on the program direction once the program directions are enforced. Additionally, states must pass enabling legislation for the scheme to operate within their jurisdiction. As of May 2025, Queensland and Victoria are the only states to have passed the necessary legislation. At this time, the program start date has not been determined, end quote. This means our chamber, the Legislative Council of New South Wales, has the opportunity right here and now to stop this harmful, blatantly socialist scheme. Over 20 years, the median Sydney house price has increased 171% and the median Sydney unit price has increased 98%. All caused by government meddling. It's not like there's a lack of land in Australia. There's plenty of land. It's government meddling which has caused the crisis. On the 29th of May this year, AMP Chief Economist Shane Oliver told the Daily Telegraph, government schemes like the low deposit guarantee and stamp duty concessions for first home buyers can help, but the benefit usually turns into a mirage as they just push up house prices even further unless you get it in really early when those schemes were first offered. End quote. In the same article, UNSW Professor of Housing Research and Policy Hal Pawson said that while the first home guarantee helps lower the deposit hurdle, it doesn't reduce the size of the mortgage you need. Saving for a deposit requires discipline and it makes one feel proud. The main issues impacting the dire state of housing are a lack of housing supply due to sloth speed planning approvals of state and local governments and excessive immigration. The last reported immigration numbers show that in December 2024, we had new arrivals of 340,000 in just 6 months. That was 80,000 higher than originally forecast by the federal government. Gee, surprise, surprise, Mr Deputy President, we've got a housing crisis. We're being flooded by migrants. Mr Deputy President, I support a 5-year immigration pause. We've been a very generous nation to new arrivals. On balance, they've been a net positive, but surely it is time for a breather and a public debate during a pause period to soberly consider what immigration policy is optimal. Now, the other massive issue causing the housing crisis is excessive bureaucracy and regulation around the construction industry. I'll be moving a bill next week called the 60-day DA, which means if somebody puts in a DA and it's not approved after 60 days, automatically approved. That's the type of thinking that we need to solve this crisis. These are the issues that need to be tackled, not another new federal government intervention which will only drive prices up and approve mortgages for those who are yet to develop the financial discipline to service a 30-year mortgage. Libertarians believe in private ownership. This scheme will result in home owners sharing ownership with the state. It'll create ghettos long term. I know exactly what will happen here. People will get approved for a mortgage, buy a home, thanks to the government, and then default on the mortgage. They haven't had the discipline. The property will then need to be sold and former homeowners will be disillusioned with the property market and life in general. Now, for over 20 years before coming to this place, Mr Deputy President, I operated a small mortgage broking business, did a fair bit of political activism on the side, and I gained enormous satisfaction in meeting people and mapping out a plan to home ownership. Now, sometimes I would meet with people, usually a recently married couple, and it would often be 3 years until they bought. We'd have to sit there and map out a plan, pay off debt, save money, various other things. And that was good for them. I've seen dozens of government schemes, state and federal, with the intent of helping first home buyers. The government has caused the housing crisis via excessive regulation and excessive immigration, and then they put on a band-aid with all these endless subsidies that only achieve one thing long term, even higher house prices. Now, when I was a mortgage broker, I had no qualms about encouraging people to apply for first homeowner benefits. If the government is going to rob taxpayers and throw around a $7,000 grant or make you exempt from stamp duty, then yes, you'd be foolish not to take it. But this Help to Buy scheme is one first home buyer scheme I would strongly encourage prospective borrowers to not take up. Do you really want to co-own with the government? No, you do not. What you do need is financial discipline to save up for a deposit on your own. The world had almost 3 decades of economic growth and prosperity between the election of Margaret Thatcher and the subprime crisis in the United States, or what we know as the global financial crisis. What caused that crisis from which we're yet to recover, Mr Deputy President? The Greens have said it was bankers. Well, that is a commonly held view, but I would like to inform my colleague. In the middle of the Monica Lewinsky scandal, when the whole world was diverted by that drama, and with no fanfare, President Clinton used regulations to effectively make it very difficult for banks to decline home loan applications for borrowers, which banking rules would have normally said, you're not ready to get approved, but now they had to be approved. So what happened? A lot of people who weren't ready went and bought a mortgage. Some of them bought 10 properties under these stupid rules. And what happened? Probably the greatest property market boom of all time in the United States. Went on for almost a decade. And then we had an almighty bust. Now then Western governments took the weak option and spent trillions on bailing out reckless banks. They should have let them crash. They should have let Abigail Boyd's former employer crash for making reckless loans. Now we would have had a sharper recession if we'd done that. But we would have had a sharper recession if we'd let those banks crash, but we would have bounced out of it with strength. Now, what's happened since the global financial crisis? We've had this massive debt overhang ever since. And this is why we used to have GDP growth in the Western world, in Australia, 4% a year, 5% a year. Sometimes we have a recession, we bounce back. We've had stagnant growth ever since the global financial crisis. There's been 3 massive financial crises in the last century. There was 1929. That was just a stock market crash. We should have just let it go. But of course, government intervention turned it into the Great Depression. Then we've had the global financial crisis, which I've just talked about. But in 1987, we had the biggest stock market crash of all. Thankfully, at that time, who was leading the world? Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and Bob Hawke in this country, and who was just copying Reagan and Thatcher, by the way. And you know what they did in 1987? Reagan said, we'll just let the market find its own bottom. That's what he said. He said, we'll just let it work out. And what happened? We then had another 20 years of strong economic growth. Okay, so does the government have any expert advice or evidence showing that this Help to Buy scheme will improve housing affordability and availability? Of course not. This is a rhetorical question. There is no advice or evidence. It's a band-aid. It's a typical political response to a crisis. Oh, we are doing something. Yes, you are doing something. You're making a bad problem worse.